Yedid nefeshav harachaman, Yedid nefeshav harachaman, Meshochav decha, Eretz sonecha, Meshochav decha, Yai lai 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 lai, Eretz sonecha, Yarutz abdecha, Kemo al yai, Yishtachave lai lai lai, Yai lai 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 lai, El muchadarecha, Yarutz abdecha, Kemo ayai, Yishtachave lai lai lai, Yai lai 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 lai, El muchadarecha. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be together. It's nice to gather for a little Shabbat, kind of a contrast that I love, the Shabbat Shuva, the Shabbat between these two big holidays. Maybe it's a bit of a smaller contrast than we usually have since there was a more limited crowd on Tuesday for Rosh Hashanah. But it's great to come back together, remember that there is still Shabbat even in the midst of these major holidays. And just remember that we can also connect in smaller ways. I hope you all had a great Rosh Hashanah, whether you were at Lake Fairfax Park or whether you were here in the sanctuary or the social hall or the tent or your front porch or somebody else's front yard gathering to watch services. It was a great community event, done with a lot of effort by a lot of people, and I hope that it was fulfilling for you. And I'm always happy to be leading services with Cantor Shochet, and he is going to be keeping us in tune with the High Holy Days with some good High Holiday music. Is that right?
Yes, I hope they will be in tune. Let's hope they'll be in tune. We also should welcome Karen Kaplan,
Yes,
who
Karen
is representing our Adult Education Committee, and here on the Bima with us celebrating Shabbat. So we'll sing, and because it's Shabbat Shuva, which is the Sabbath of return, the Sabbath in between these two holidays, we're using this special prayer book tonight, Mishkan Halev, which is a prayer book that we use for Slichot, and we used, I think, the last Friday night or the Friday before that during the month of Elul. So it has some really nice readings in here that you may find comforting during these days of repentance. For those people who are watching on our streaming at home, there's a link to this prayer book right at the top of our streaming page, so you can follow along as well. So let's turn to page 3, and a song that we haven't sung in a little while here, but Ozi v'zimrat Yah, my strength and your song will be my salvation. Let's join together. Ozi v'zimrat Yah, Zimrat Yah, Vayehi li Lishua, Ozi veZimrat Yah, Vayehi li Lishua, Ozi veZimrat Yah, Vayehi. Time for candles. Do you want to?
So for candles, we have asked Donna Schwartz to come and help us with lighting and with the reading. In honor of Donna is such a wonderful and special member of our congregation. Has been a lay leader in many ways. Most recently in leading our Mother's Circle and helping mothers of Jewish children who are not themselves Jewish learn to bring Judaism into their homes. And it's been an incredible program that we're so grateful for.
I'm going to let you have this. Oh, whoops, wrong one. Yep, yeah, the red one, sorry. Take two.
Okay, here you go.
I honor the gift of stillness and rest, a day devoted to peace. Peace within my soul. On this day, I have everything I need. Peace with those around me. On this day, I seek no quarrel or strife. Peace of earth and sky, green trees and quiet water. I give thanks that I am present in this world. I celebrate the miracle of existence, the breath within me, the beating of my heart, the love that blesses my life.
On page 10 in our prayer books, we'll join together as we sing the candle blessing as soon as the lights are lit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thanks, Donna. And so as we welcome Shabbat in song, we'll turn to Zamru Ladonai, which you can find in your books on page 15. Page 15. Psalm 98, Zamru Ladonai. Please join me. Zamru Ladonai, Zamru Ladonai bechinor, Yai lai lai lai, Yai lai 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 lai. Zamru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor bekol zimra, b'chatzorot bekol shofar, hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. Yalalai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yiram hayam umlo, tevel veyoshveva. Yiram hayam umlo, tevel veyoshveva. Yai lai lai lai, 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 yai lai lai lai. On page 19, you'll find the Psalm 93, Mikolot Mayim Rabim, greater by far than the sounds of great waters, more than the majesty of breakers at sea, majesty most sublime is the eternal. Some of you might have heard Cantor sing this before, Mikolot Mayim Rabim. Mikolot מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני, אדיר במרום אדוני. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים. מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים.
Page 26. There is no human being who does not carry a treasure in the soul, a moment of insight, a memory of love, a dream of excellence, a call to worship. Please rise if you are comfortable.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please join me on the Hebrew on the next page, 28, if you are comfortable. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro mariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sharim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Bore yom balayla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvayin layla, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo. El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Hamariv Aravim. And there is a lovely interpretation of this prayer on the facing page. Holy is twilight, the realm of in-between. And so our sages taught, pray in the moments when light and darkness touch. We are all twilight people, beyond categories and labels. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, widen our vision. Let it illumine our way to the God who transcends all boundaries and definitions. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight. And we continue on page 32 with Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. This scriptural passage is about passing down and remembering to follow the commandments. And the mitzvot are, of course, one way that we bring about redemption, the subject of this next prayer, the Michamocha. So to bring us into the Michamocha, I'd like to invite you to read with me this responsive reading on page 37, this interpretation of our commandments. Be mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. In everything you do, the mitzvot go with you. If you build a house, there is this. When you build a new house, you shall make a protective barrier for your roof, so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house, if anyone should fall from it. When you cross a threshold, there is this. Set these words upon your heart. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. When you see an elder, there is this. Rise before the one whose head is white with age, and regard an elder with respect. If you hire a person to work for you, there is this. You shall not exploit your neighbor. You shall not keep a worker's wages with you overnight until morning. If you have dealings with a stranger, there is this. The stranger who dwells with you shall be like a citizen among you, and you shall love that person as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. When you engage in holy work, there is this. Everyone who excelled in ability and everyone whose spirits moved them came, bringing to the Eternal their offerings. Even when you are just taking a walk, not occupied with anything, the mitzvot go with you. For there is this. Set these words upon your heart. Speak of them on your way. The Michamocha is on page 40.
Kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norot teilot osef elech, malchutcha ra'u vanecha, okei ayam lifnei Moshe ומרים זאלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד הזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני Ka'al Yisrael.
For our Hashkivenu prayer, the prayer for rest every night and renewed life in the morning, we offer this alternative reading on page 45. Peace comes with the sunset, cool breezes ease the heat of day. All things settle into stillness, gentle songs of crickets, moonrise and the silence of night. Give us shelter in your presence. Bring peace to those who yearn for peace. Enfold us in your quiet. Let our fears rest in you. Vishamru is a prayer remembering Shabbat, page 46.
Veshameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. The next section of our service, Hatfilah, begins on page 48. Page 48, if you're comfortable rising, please do so, and we'll join together in the first two prayers, including the special song Zochrenu in the middle of the Avot. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Page 50. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. Zochreinu lechaim, Melech hafetz b'chaim, V'chotvenu b'sefer chachayim, Lema'anecha Elohim chayim. Melech hozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Page 52, or page 53 rather. Let's read this English kavanah, this English intentional prayer about the Giverot together at the top. Create for me a pure heart, renew within me constancy and calm. Respond, answer us with justice and all. God of our salvation, you are the source of trust from the farthest ends of the earth to its most distant seas. At the bottom of page 52, Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hakol. And then on page 54, Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalalucha selah. You are holy, your name is holy. Seekers of holiness praise you day by day. Selah, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Blessed are you. I'm sorry, on Shabbat Shuva we changed that chatimah. We'll read it, the one underneath. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelech hakadosh. Blessed are you, Adonai, holy sovereign. And you may be seated. On page 62. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael utfilatam be'ahava tikabel biratzon utehil ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha el karov lechol korav penei el avadecha vechonenu shefoch ruchacha aleinu. Page 64. Almost at the bottom. B'techazenu einenu b'shuvacha letzion barachamim baruch atah Adonai hamachazir shechinato letzion. Blessed are you whose divine presence is felt again in Zion. And a prayer of gratitude on page 67, an English interpretation of the Modim prayer, Modim anachnu lach. Let's read the bottom reading called A Momentary Glory together. This world is a momentary glory. I never thought it would last forever, so I tried to get it down in one notebook or another, in one poem or another. Somewhere you can find it. And we sing on page 70 the insert that comes in the middle of the prayer for peace. It's called B'Sefer Chaim. Some of you maybe who grew up in a more traditional household, you might be familiar with this melody for B'Sefer Chaim. It's right on page 70 in the middle of the page. B'Sefer Chaim beracha v'shalom u'farnasa tova nizacher v'nikatev lefanecha anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael l'chaim tovim u'l'shalom. Peace, profound and lasting, all-embracing. Peace, let this be your gift to Israel, your people. In your goodness, author of peace, bless us and all people, every season, every hour, with the peace that is yours to give. Together, let us and the whole family of Israel be remembered and inscribed in the book of life. May it be a life of goodness, blessing, and prosperity. May it be a life of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. You, Adonai, are the blessed one who blesses us with peace. And we take a moment now to find peace in our own hearts as we pray silently.
Say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We pray for peace, and on this Shabbat Shuva, Shabbat of return, we also pray for a return to health for those who are struggling with illness and struggling with pain. We hope that our prayers will bring comfort to them, and we hope that our offers of help will also bring them healing. Mi sheberach avotenu Abraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, v'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech v'yarpeh et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all those who are ill. And we think this evening especially of the following members of our congregation: Alon ben Barbara, Hannah Esther bat Crandall, Hannah Leah bat Yosef Behendel, Sima Pearl Leah bat Chaya, Yehuda ben Fischel, Mindy Bickle, Henry Botuk, Benaifer Davar, Elizabeth Drabkin, Ellen Gallant, Christopher Gardner, Gail Gershman, Sarah Heppenstall, Martha Kelly, Beverly Cooperman, Robert Lawrence, Sally Margolis, Isabel Melton, Rhoda Moses, Stan Richter, David Roby, Angie Slonim, Andrew and Kelly Warner. And I invite you to add to this name someone who you are thinking of. May the Holy One be filled with compassion and cause their health to be restored and their strength revived, and may they be granted a complete healing of mind, body, and spirit. And we join together in a song of healing, Mi Sheberach. Mi Sheberach imotenu Kor habracha Lavotenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
I don't know if where you might have been at around 12:30 today, but there was a flyover from some military jets. I don't know whether it was that Air Force or Navy. Maybe somebody could tell me. Is that the F-16, or maybe they're upgraded to the F-17 at this point? I don't even know what they are. But when I saw those jets, because we don't see them all the time, it just brought me right back to even more thinking about September 11th, 2001. And do you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001? Tuesday morning, right? It was a beautiful sunny day out. I remember pulling out of my driveway to come to Temple a little bit before 9 that morning, and as I listened to WTOP every morning, and I turned on the radio and pulled out of my driveway, I heard what sounded like something different, an abnormal commotion and frantic voices. It was unusual. I could tell right away that something was wrong, and so I immediately pulled back into my driveway and went inside and said to Denise, something is going on, and turned on the television to see the smoke and fire coming from the World Trade Center. And then almost instantaneously, I saw, as many of you did too, that second plane crash into the other tower. There really were no words to adequately express the feeling that I felt at that moment, or I'm sure that you felt at that moment. It is a moment, though, that was seared into my brain, which is what trauma does to us. And of course, this was a trauma. It was a national trauma, a communal trauma at the highest level. On 9/11, Rabbi Schwartzman and Rabbi Burstein of blessed memory and I opened the sanctuary for our members who wanted to just come and find comfort, be within this room. The next day, I was called to the Pentagon as a police chaplain to provide chaplaincy for our police and firefighters who were at the Pentagon grounds. And I remember vividly when I drove into the Pentagon entrance, which it was a lot easier to do then than it is to do now. I drove in and parked right in front of the side of the Pentagon where the plane had hit. And what I saw immediately, well, before I even saw it, what I smelled when I got out of my car was the jet fuel. And what I saw immediately was the hole in the side of the Pentagon with all the debris. But more importantly, the faces of disbelief of the police officers, the firefighters, all the military personnel, civilians that were there that I talked to, some of whom I counseled. And I remember on that day, September 12th, the firefighters that went onto the top of the Pentagon and unfurled that huge flag that was then draped over the side of the Pentagon just as President Bush and his entourage arrived on the grounds. That moment, the unfurling of that flag was the ritual that began our healing and gave us strength to build our resilience. That moment meant hope was alive. It meant that as a nation, we would survive. And indeed, we have. In looking back over these 20 years, we can see how our country has changed, how we have built a safer society in many ways on the backs of those 3,000 plus people who gave their lives on 9/11 and countless others who were injured or suffered ongoing conditions or stricken with grief from losing loved ones and friends. Out of fear, loss, and tragedy, we have grown in strength and in hope. Much of that is thanks to all the people who work in the law enforcement community, the intelligence community, and the criminal justice community who have worked tirelessly to keep us safe. There has not been an attack on our soil from international terrorists at such magnitude in these 20 years. Now, the focus is on domestic terrorism, which is a whole nother issue. Come for another Shabbat on that one. Rabbi Saxe and I have invited our dear member, Gregg Maisel, husband of Donna Schwartz. And since Donna was lighting the candles anyway, we said, Gregg, why don't you come and speak to us? Or maybe we went the other way. But to share his reflections tonight about 9/11, and he spent the bulk of his career going after and prosecuting terrorists. Gregg has been an attorney in the Department of Justice for more than 30 years. He began his career as a civil rights prosecutor in the Civil Rights Division, and for the past 26 years, he has been an assistant United States attorney for the District of Columbia, and for more than 12 years, he has been chief of the U.S. Attorney's Office National Security Section, where he supervises cases involving international terrorism, domestic terrorism, espionage, and other national security cases. Gregg has been inspired over the years working with survivors and family members of terrorism and will share his thoughts tonight on this topic. Gregg?
Thank you, Cantor, Shochet. So first of all, I'm a government attorney, so I have to start with a disclaimer, a legal disclaimer. So even though Mike Shochet, Cantor Shochet, just read all those nice titles that I have, I've got to tell you that I am here in my personal capacity today and not as a representative of the Department of Justice, and that any opinions I express are mine alone and not those of the department. All right, we got that out of the way. Cantor Shochet started recalling his day on September 11th, and I know all of us who were alive then have our own personal memories vividly, as you said, etched in our brains. So I will start there. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, I was at the Holocaust Museum. And we're all familiar with the Holocaust Museum, and I went to their website, and their mission is, as we know, working to keep Holocaust memory alive while inspiring citizens and leaders to confront hatred, prevent genocide, and promote human dignity in our constantly changing world. Now, why was I there? I was there, it was part of an Anti-Defamation League, the ADL program. They had just begun in the past 2 years before that to bring police officers, federal, local, from around the country to the Holocaust Museum to have them tour to learn and study and have a facilitated discussion about the role of police in Nazi Germany, and then translate that into what their role is as protectors of our freedoms here in America and our Constitution. And it's a tremendously successful program. And so as a member of our office's Bias Crime Task Force, I was there to take the same tour that our law enforcement colleagues took. No surprise, I did not get to finish the tour that day. As we were starting, we started to get some news of what was going on. And while we were in there, a former colleague of mine, Barbara Olson, who had been a prosecutor in our office and who was one of the many prosecutors who trained me, was on board American Airlines Flight 77. She was married to the Solicitor General of the United States, Ted Olson, and she was one of the people who managed to get on the phone while on that flight. And she talked to the DOJ, the Department of Justice Command Center, and narrated basically what was happening in the air. This was one of the first ways in which our government actually got a firsthand account of the horrors that were taking place in the sky, in addition to the obvious telltale signs of the horrors that were happening on the ground. As we know, Flight 77 was crashed into the Pentagon. And after my tour was evacuated, as we were all evacuated out onto the streets, and as I sat that morning in my car, desperately trying to get home to see if my wife Donna and my two girls, Kara and Jill, were safe, because as we all remember, cell phone service immediately went out. No one could talk to anybody. I sat there watching the smoke from the Pentagon come over the horizon as I watched the White House and the Capitol waiting to see if the next plane would come. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, in about the farthest place you could possibly be from us here in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, a terrorist group called the Abu Sayyaf Group, affiliated with Al-Qaeda, was holding 2 Americans hostage, as well as more than a dozen Philippine citizens hostage. The 2 Americans were named Martin and Gracia Burnham. They were Christian missionaries who had devoted their lives to working with the indigenous peoples in the jungles of the Philippines, bringing them medical supplies, helping to educate them, and doing their missionary work. On 9/11, even though they were in one of the remotest places on the planet Earth, they, Martin and Gracia, learned of this terrible attack that had occurred here in the United States, because the terrorists who were holding them captive had one radio, and they were listening to the Voice of America, and they were celebrating the victory that they thought they had achieved. Less than 3 weeks later, after 9/11, President George W. Bush announced that the FBI had captured yet another terrorist, a man named Zaid Hassan Abed Latif Safarini. Safarini had just been released from a Pakistani jail after serving 15 years for his role as the lead hijacker of Pan Am 73. That occurred in 1986 in Karachi, Pakistan, and it led to the death of 20 people, including 2 Americans. When President Bush made his announcement, it was the first time he used the phrase, the global war on terrorism, and it's the first time he announced that our country would be vigilant and not forget any acts of terrorism. Mr. Saffarini was being brought back here to the District of Columbia to be tried in court for that terrible terrorist offense, and that case was to be handled by myself and our fellow TRS congregant, Jennifer Levy. Now, in my career as a prosecutor, which Mike mentioned how many years, I don't need to repeat it, but I've been honored to work with so many talented, dedicated FBI agents, analysts, other federal law enforcement agents, other prosecutors. It's been truly an honor. But the thing that has inspired me the most these past 20 years since 9/11 has been my work with the survivors of terrorism and with the families of those victims who were killed in terrorist attacks. These are some of the most remarkable people I have ever met. Their heroism, resilience, and perseverance have been a constant source of inspiration to me in my work as a national security prosecutor. I could go on all night talking about it, but I will focus mainly on 2 examples. So back to those jungles in the Philippines. Martin and Gracia Burnham had been held for 3 months by those terrorists in the Abu Sayyaf group as of September 11th, 2001. During their captivity, they endured unspeakable horrors, including being relentlessly force-marched through the jungles of the Philippines. They often suffered for days without food, shelter, or medicine. They were held 9 more months hostage after September 11th until June of 2002. At that point, the armed forces of the Philippines had a rescue mission, and they managed to rescue Gracia, but tragically, Martin was killed in the crossfire, did not survive. After her rescue, I had the honor to spend quite a bit of time with Gracia Burnham, as again, we were going to be prosecuting that case. I met with her and her family in her home in Wichita, Kansas, and then again when she came here to Washington, D.C. Thanks to her help, we were able to indict 11 leaders and members of this terrorist group who were responsible for that awful hostage-taking. A few years later, but despite threats to her and incredible danger to her, she agreed to go back to the Philippines to testify in a courtroom against more than a dozen of her captors, standing up to them and causing them to be found guilty. And again, I was honored to be with her there in the courtroom when that happened. She's very different from any of us. She's a missionary Christian. She goes out trying to spread the gospel, but she has been an inspiration to me. She's made it her life work to honor, to inspire others arising from this terrible captivity. She created a foundation in Martin's honor to do the work that she and he shared, and she wrote 2 best-selling books, one about her captivity and one to provide spiritual lessons that she learned during her captivity and in the aftermath of Martin's death. In some of her passages, Gracia speaks about being a hostage in the jungle, and amazingly, living in that terrible, terrible world, she was able, through her faith, to express thanks to God. And she was thankful because she had the opportunity, and she blessed every day that she had the opportunity to spend the entire day with her husband, Martin, who she loved. This is a sentiment that Don and I were particularly moved by when we read her books and when we met her. I want to shift now to that other man, Saffarini, the one who was brought back by our brave FBI agents 3 weeks after September 11th. Jennifer Levy and I were successful in what we did. Eventually, he pled guilty to all 95 counts against him. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years. But the real highlight in preparing for that case is that Jenny and I got to meet dozens and dozens of amazing people who had survived just a terrible ordeal aboard that plane. So for 16 hours, the terrorists held that plane hostage. They took over the plane. They executed an American mercilessly, dumped his body on the tarmac. And at the end of 16 hours, when they couldn't get their demands met, they literally opened fire and started tossing hand grenades inside the plane to try to kill everyone on board. Just horrific. Amazingly, only 20 were killed, and we met so many of the survivors as well as the family members of those who perished. And again, they were all heroic, but those I'm going to mention right now were the flight attendants on that plane. So Pan Am, up till then, had never had any non-American flight attendants, but for the first time, they decided they were going to train a group of Indian citizens to be flight attendants, particularly for flights that went from what was then Bombay, now Mumbai, and coming to New York. So the plane had a bunch of 20-somethings, 20-year-old, mid-20 Indian women who basically were left in charge when the hijackers took over because the pilot and the co-pilot and engineer had escaped out the cockpit in order to render the plane useless to the hijackers who did not know how to fly the plane. Those flight attendants, imagine, in their mid-20s, they had guns to their heads from these terrorists, and they were ordered to collect passports of everybody on board. They knew that the hijackers wanted to kill Americans. So what did they do? They hid the American passports, basically whenever the terrorists looked the other way. So they would collect the passports from the Americans, and then as they're collecting others, they would stash the American passports in other places. So by the time the pile got up to the leader, Saffarini, there were no American passports aboard. That was a tremendous act of courage, bravery, that I will never forget. In the end, in that terrible massacre when the terrorists opened fire on all of the passengers, there had been 11 children flying on that flight unattended, without any adults with them. The lead flight attendant, Nirja Banot, used her body to shield these children. Nirja was killed, but all of those children survived. Nirja is now lionized in Indian. There's a movie about her there. There's a postage stamp for her. There's a national award each year given for bravery. And I met her family and was so inspired by everything about that they spoke about Nirja as well as the other survivors. When we had our sentencing proceeding in that case, we brought all these people together in a U.S. courtroom in Washington, D.C., and for 2 days, they talked to the court about what had happened, the horrors that Saffarini and his crew had wreaked on them, and it was just such an emotional experience. Veteran judge Emmett Sullivan, who had been on the bench for 20 years, well-known judge throughout the country, was in tears on the bench. CNN reporters who cover all sorts of tragedies in tears in the courtroom. One of the things I realized for the first time, even though I'd been a prosecutor for a while, was a criminal sentencing is the closest thing we do in our public life to what we do here in this temple. It has all the religious themes in it when you have a sentencing. And I had never truly appreciated it until I got prepared to speak at that sentencing to preface all of these witnesses. And what I went to was essentially our High Holy Day services and the types of words that were used there. And these were the words that I used to begin my hour-long speech. I said, we are here to remember. We are here to recount. We are here to bear witness. We are here to pay tribute. We are here to punish. We are here for justice. So, terrorism hasn't stopped. While Cantor Shochet is right, all of the changes in our government and our law enforcement intelligence community, we have been successful in preventing another homeland attack of that magnitude. Other crimes have occurred. September 11th, 11 years later, 2012, our mission and annex buildings in Benghazi were attacked by another group of terrorists, killing our ambassador, Chris Stevens, and 3 other Americans. Again, I was honored to lead a team of prosecutors, pick a team of prosecutors, and then supervise them who were able to prosecute that case, and our country was able to bring 2 individuals here to justice, and once again, I met heroes of the victims there, whose stories were just amazing. Again, our country, as President Bush said back on shortly after September 11th, we don't forget. And part of what we do to honor these victims is our vigilance in not forgetting. One of the attacks that we haven't forgotten was the biggest terrorist attack against our country prior to 9/11 was the Lockerbie bombing, what's known as the Lockerbie bombing, a bombing of a plane, Pan Am 103, that blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing all 259 passengers aboard and 11 people on the ground. We recently were able to bring new charges on the 32nd anniversary of that event against the bomb maker and are trying to pursue justice there. It may surprise some of you to know that our temple has a particular connection to that event because one of the amazing heroes and family members of the victims involved in the Pan Am 103 case is our own Rabbi Stephanie Bernstein. Rabbi Bernstein at the time, on December 21st, 1988, was a young mother of 2 children, and her husband Michael was a Department of Justice attorney whose job, perhaps ironically, perhaps tellingly, was to hunt Nazis. He was in the unit of the Department of Justice that hunted Nazis, and he perished aboard that plane. Ever since that date, Rabbi Bernstein and other victims' families have worked tirelessly to improve our airline safety. Rabbi Bernstein herself lobbied Congress for years for the passage of the Aviation Security Act in 1992, and she is currently a member of the Aviation Security Advisory Committee that helps advise the TSA on how we can keep all of us safe. So, just as the Holocaust Museum works to remember the victims of the Holocaust and keep that memory alive, all of our jobs as people who were alive and remember 9/11 is to keep the memory of 9/11 alive. In that way, we honor the victims of that attack as well as the first responders, but we also honor the victims of all terrorist attacks. Through our efforts at remembrance and our own acts of resilience and tikkun olam, we can all work to confront, as the Holocaust Museum does, hatred, prevent genocide, and promote human dignity in our constantly changing world.
Gregg, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and so much knowledge. And of course, thank you for focusing on not just heroism, but the strength, human strength to persevere and to affirm life. Thank you for mentioning Stephanie and her heroism. And it makes me think of the Jewish text from Pirkei Avot, B'makom she'ein anashim, in a place where there are no human beings, hishtadel lihiot ish, strive to be human. And I hope that all of us have that inner strength, and that when things like this happen, my hope is that while we see heroes around us, that each one of us has that strength that can respond in that way to this kind of adversity. And thank you for your leadership in fighting terrorism.
I echo what Jeff said. Greg, thank you for being here and sharing your words. I know that for those of you who will be with Rabbi Bernstein at Yom Kippur, she's going to be speaking for the first time about this topic. So, and if you're not in her service, it'll be on our website. You can watch it at your convenience after Yom Kippur. I want to share a song with you. It's called One Small Flame. It was written actually at Hanukkah, just a few months after 9/11 on 2001, by Cantor Wally Shackett Briskin, who is a friend of both Jeff and myself, who saw the Hanukkah candles as a reminder of the light of hope that our nation needed to use to find strength from 9/11. The message of this song connects to this week's Torah portion, Vayelech, which encourages us to find strength in our faith through difficult and dark times. The Torah portion says, "Be steadfast and strong and do not fear, for God is going with you. God will not let go of you, nor will God forsake you. Fear nothing and not be frightened." This was the message we heard 20 years ago as well. Do not be frightened. Have faith, have hope, have assurance that we are strong and we will get through this. We have, and we are stronger as our light continues to shine for all the world. Here's One Small Flame. On that dark day of autumn, when hope seemed lost and gone, we had to find the fire to help us journey on. When we saw her flame, it seemed so small, so slight. Yet Lady Liberty stood strong, lighting up the night. With just one small flame, we kept our hope alive. And this one small flame helped us always to survive, as it shone the way to liberty, as it shone the way to trust, to remind us of the light of love deep inside of us. In the midst of the rubble, it looked like hope was dead. The towers lay in ruin, the city glowed in red. Then brave and selfless heroes came, responding to the call. And through the dust and smoke we saw Miss Liberty stand tall. With just one small flame, we kept our hope alive. And this one small flame helped us always to survive, as it shone the way to liberty, as it shone the way to trust, to remind us of the light of love deep inside of us. When our world seems somber and the sky is dark above, we light a flame of freedom and let it shine on love. And soon each light we kindle will shine on every face, warming up the future, spreading love and grace. With just shown the way to liberty? Has it shown the way to trust? To remind us of the light of love deep inside of us. If we each keep freedom shining, adding one more lights one by one, then America can make a flame brighter than the sun. With just one small flame, we keep our hope alive, and this one small flame will help us always to survive. As it shines the way to liberty, as it shines the way to trust, to remind us of the light of love deep inside of us.
Thank you. We're going to turn to the concluding prayers. Aleinu l'shabeach. We are reading the alternative prayer, which is our usual prayer, on page 79 in the gray. And if you're comfortable, please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'tet gedula liotzer bereshit, shehu notes shamayim v'yoser aretz, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Seated. Our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days, and those who died at this season in years past. Our heart opens as well to the wider circle of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. Zichronam livracha. As I name these loved ones who have been lost, if you are remembering someone, I invite you to rise on hearing their name and remain standing so that we can be supportive of you in your loss. We remember the following people for whom we are observing Shloshim, the first 30 days since burial. Marcia Katay, mother of Kayleen Katay. Robert Susskind, father of Peter Susskind. Stanley Richter, father of Felice Richter. Leslie Krause, father of Erica Pyatt. David Shapiro, father of Ellen House. Norma Morgan Besser, mother of Jill Patrone. Joan Beckard, father of Marina Beckard. And Richard Sherman, father of Lynn Alloy. And those for whom we are observing Yortzites this week: Karen Albert, Bob Barvin, Paula Barvin, Moises Ben Shoam, Shirley Burnbray, Ann Block, Milton Braunstein, Helen Brown, Norman Bruck, Robert Budenstein, Jean Chayette, Ruth Checknoff, Sophia Daniel, Rosalie Durtke, Alice Douglas Wilcox, Lawrence Eagle, Claude Einhorn, Adrian Epstein, Beatrice Faurer, Richard Finn, Michael Fleischer, David Goldstein, Bruno Hirschberg, Robert Houchin, Fred Yvonne, William Kahani, Kenneth Kerman, Faith Krieger, Selma Kushner-Husek, Esther Kuznets, Arlene Lan, Mary Leek, Ken Levy, Sarah Hart Loeb, Kathleen Loescher, Bettina Malka, Walter Margison, Esther Mazer, Gertrude Meyerson, Lorna Moore, Shirley Moses Picker, William Moskowitz, Rudolph Pola, Clara Pressman, Rose Roth, Hannah Sandler, Ruth Schlansky, Rosalie Schneider, Hannah Riva Shapiro, Richard Sherman, Frida Simon, Bessie Sofer, Joshua Stein. We remember those who lost their lives as a result of the events of September 11th on that day and later, and we remember all those victims of terror and those whom you might want to add to this moment. With gratitude and honoring all of their names and their souls, we rise, and on page 86, we join together in these words. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei decho Beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam al'almei al-maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata le'ela u'le'ala mikol birchata v'shirata. Excuse me, these are Shabbat Shuva words. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. I invite Karen Kaplan to speak with us. She is a longtime lay leader in adult education and has been leading the charge in planning the Israel-Palestine Symposium that is coming up next month.
I'm Amy's size.
Sorry?
I'm Amy's size. Shabbat Shalom. I'm honored and happy to see everybody here and to think about seeing everybody who's watching this by our wonderful streaming. I happen to know some of the folks in our control room, and these folks tonight, the crew tonight, and others who bring us these services and others each week, holidays, do a wonderful job for us. And we can't see them, but they can see us. They can see us here. They can see all of you. So a thank you, if you wave with me, to them, to Gil, to Bob, to Graham back with sound, and to Greg, who's up there with them tonight. They do wonderful things for us. Announcements. Surprise, we have announcements tonight. We are lucky in a number of ways. We are going to have the Motors, men of Road of Shalom, are going to have a brunch this Sunday where their new location is going to be at Celebrity Deli, yummy. It's going to be at 10:30. Join them for friendship, fellowship, and good food. Sukkot on Monday, September 20th, a family sing-along. an adult service. The festivities are going to begin at 5:30 with sukkah decorating and dinner. There's going to be dinner under the temple's outdoor tent, which you all saw when you came in. At 6:30, families can join the clergy for a family sing-along on the school portico down below, while the adults are invited to join services in the Mishkan. There'll be boxed dinners available for purchase, or you can bring a picnic from home. There'll be tables set up under the tents. Please register for this event by 5 p.m. on Friday, 9/18. And then, as Rabbi Saxe mentioned, there is the symposium that we like to talk about a lot, the Israeli-Palestinian dilemma, moving beyond who's right and who's wrong. So remember these dates: Sunday, October 17th, the 24th, and the 31st. And over the course of these 3 consecutive Sunday afternoons, we're going to be taking a deep dive in an interesting way of looking at these at the issues. We're going to be hearing experts talk about the history and the present day facts on the ground, what's happening now to the people who are there trying to forge a life, to live a life in the midst of this conflict. We're going to hear from everyday Palestinians and Israelis, and we're going to hear from organizations who are working together, Israelis and Palestinians working together to pursue change. Our speakers are among the best known, well-known Jewish leaders and Americans, Israelis, Palestinian experts. They include, among others, MK Rabbi Gilad Kariv. He is the first Reform rabbi in the Knesset. Very interesting and wonderful man. Also, Rabbi Daniel Hartman. Many of you all have participated in the I Engage series that the temple's held over the past couple of years. He is a remarkably engaging man. Rabbi Josh Weinberg from the URJ, who is now, URJ is partnering with us in the symposium, and Gaith Al-Amari, who is a fascinating professor at the University of Maryland. So it's all going to be, again, live streamed to registrants available throughout the country. This is not just for Rodef. It is being offered to Reform congregations and national organizations all through this country. The sessions, because most of them will be recorded, will be available 24/7 on those Sundays, all through the weeks, the 3 weeks, and then for 30 days afterward. So if you happen to be doing anything else on those Sundays, you won't miss it. And if you register before September 17th, it's a bargain. There is a early bird rate. So if you haven't registered, please do that now. Do it. It's a great thing to do. Please. And I would urge you to take a look at once you register, you'll be able to go on to the Excelevance website, which is the way we're presenting this symposium to you. And if you look at the e-newsletter, which you should for all the wonderful things we're doing, or your connections, you will see the program described in detail. It's wonderful. Good things are going to happen during this symposium. And so I have added to what I'm supposed to say with a good advertisement for this symposium. I wish you a beautiful weekend and a Shabbat Shalom, and I thank you, Rabbi Saxe and Cantor Shochet, for a wonderful service.
We're going to turn to page 12, and we rise for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצבנו, בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כיוונו ובחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. Chaim.
L'chaim.
Because of the hour, I think we'll make that our closing song. But we'll just, those words that I was going to end with, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, is the message for tonight, which is we hope and we pray that we build a world of love and peace. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Amen.